complaining about modernity. Pip's in Epsom. Pip, what would you like to say?
Never let you be called yourself an old git, James. Long time no speak. Well, I mean, aside from the whole TV thing,
yes.
More importantly for you and I and the world is that radio. My kids are 26 and 22. Neither of them listen to the radio.
Oh, no.
They have, no, literally, and I've grown up with it the whole of my life, and they have with the whole of their life. And in fact, I was away last week for a couple of days, and I came back, and my son and his girlfriend live at home, and they said, "Oh, we realised what was odd when you weren't in. You came in and turned the radio on."
What's wrong with them?
Well, there's nothing wrong with them per se, but
I'm terribly sorry, Pip, but if they're not listening to this programme every day, they're in need of an intervention.
Well, indeed. Well, there is that, but it's just the fact they don't listen at all. So, I mean, I can have the radio on, whatever it's you or
yes.
Radio 2 and I'm shouting, "Oh, for goodness sake!" and
yes.
I'm, cursing at the news, "Oh, for goodness sake!" and they have no opinion. They don't know what's going on. I mean, I think when that little lad Archie Battersby died a couple of weeks ago, I said, "Oh, isn't it sad?" And they said,
yes.
"What's that then?" And I just looked at them as if like, "Oh, good God, you're functioning human beings. How can you not know what's going on?"
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. So the news really is absent from their daily diet, and that, I guess, it's partly slightly worrying in the context of politics, isn't it? And what they will base their decisions on when they come to vote. Can I ask a silly question? Two silly questions. What do they do instead, and what do they talk about? In the moments where you might be talking about something you'd seen on telly, heard on the radio, or that was in the news.
They're both my son and his girlfriend live with us, so they're both in their early 20s.
Yeah.
They are on the computer a lot doing games. They do Wordle. They do.
That's the New York Times. But it doesn't. They don't follow through to the. I don't
really think that counts.
No,
they do jigsaws. They do gardening. They play with the cats. They just don't interact with news.
And does that leave a hole?
It makes me feel a bit isolated.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was just trying to pin down whether or not there is something here, or whether or not I am sounding like an old git. And I think you're kindly right. I don't think I am. I think there is something.
Well, if you're an old git, I'm the
a git-ess, or whatever the female equivalent might be. And I think it's back to my own, not just my childhood, but when I was there at the age of Pip's children, in my early 20s, it'd be stuff that you watched all together. So, shall I run through the top 10 things, most watched things in the country? Because this is like the dog days, if you like, of broadcast television. So, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, that got 13.2 million viewers. The Tourist, we watched that. 3 of us watched that, actually. That was brilliant. That was the Jamie Dornan one where he woke up and couldn't remember anything at all. Absolutely superb piece of drama. That comes in at second. Trigger Point, another thriller, I think. Passed me by that one. The Thief, His Wife and the Canoe. That was the 4th most popular programme in the first 6 months. And these are all things you can watch together. They're real cliffhangers. Eurovision Song Contest, a classic example of everyone sitting on the same sofa watching it. But what sort of hole has been left? Daniel's in Sunderland. Daniel, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. When you mentioned about your dad, that kind of struck a chord with me. My dad had died last year, and it all kind of just came back. These memories of sitting, waiting for basically the new episode of Doctor Who to start, and that would be the big event of everyone sitting together. You make a big thing out of it, make a big deal out of it. But now, 31, I've got 2 kids myself, and I'm trying to recapture that moment of this new movie's out, let's all sit down and watch it, and it'll not be long before after half an hour of watching the Paw Patrol the movie, phones come out, and you've just completely.
I bet yours come out as well, though, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were just talking about the kids.
No. To say, but you just saw. Consistently bombarded with content, not just what you have right now, but what's coming out next. And that kind of excitement, that conversation of when the show's finished, it's like, oh, that was mint. What we're watching? What watching next? Or what's going to happen next week? Now it's like the TV has just got YouTube rubbish content repeated. over and over
we're both
again.
sounding like old gits, and I think you're younger than me. So, I mean, don't forget that Gogglebox is a relatively recent phenomenon, and that, in a way, is the sort of documentary version of the royal family, isn't it? I mean, it is literally just pointing a camera at families watching the telly together. So it's still got some currency in modern family life. We're watching other families watch television rather than watching television with our own families.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Crazy. 11:24. Thank you, Daniel. I like this. This is from Kate Robbins, who is actually on the telly, so she's a little bit more qualified, perhaps, than the rest of us. You'd have seen her in Afterlife and Unforgotten and various other entertainments. She says, a minor head wobble needed, James. Families eating out together more, recording TikToks together, holidaying together. The lexicon of families is more open and shared, intergenerationally sharing. So watching a network TV show together as a family isn't really missed. Do you know what? She's got a point, actually. So it is not there anymore, but there is more intergenerational mixing. You're more likely to be listening to the same music as your parents or as your children, or to be aware of it. We go to concerts as a family. I never went to a pop concert with either of my parents in my life. I went to see Miles Davis at the NEC with my old man once, which was an absolutely magical experience. But going to see Taylor Swift or Christina, I'm going to get my names wrong now, aren't I? Olivia Rodrigo. Who else have we been to see lately? We've seen some amazing gigs. So that's nice. But yeah, maybe there is a little bit more of intergenerational entertainment in different fields. Sam's in Manchester. Sam, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. Thanks for letting me on.
When people say that, I always get worried. It always sounds like you're about to do something awful. I don't let you on, Sam. You're welcome. You're always welcome here.
Thank you. Well, in contrast to the other gentleman, I didn't get his name, 31-year-old who has children. I'm 31 and I don't have children. Unfortunately, me and my partner can't. But that doesn't mute from the fact that I spend a lot of time with my younger siblings and lots of extended family. And this whole TV thing, my point was actually made by the text that was just sent in, that the TV will not be missed now. As a medium to sort of ingest and sit down together in a room and watch it late at night. And Christmas, I always remember Christmas like that as well, but it's changed now. Not just because...
But does it matter?
Media.
Kate Robbins pointing out that we might do other things together across the generations. Just because we're not sitting staring at the box together doesn't mean that we're not having shared experiences.
Yeah, indeed. We play board games.
Okay.
I invest heavily in games now. Growing up through the 90s, and you've seen that surge of consoles and stuff. The thing that's coming back now is a lot of board games.
Really?
One-to-one. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I spent so much money on different types of board games, from old generation type board games to even newer concepts now. And my sister, she's 14, and she loves to come up to see me and my partner, and brings the parents with them. We all sit down, we all play board games now. And when we're talking about getting media from radio and from other places, we all bring different stories in together. Have you seen this? Oh no, tell me about it. And then that's a bit more of indulging through media from different people in your family, and it brings you together. It starts conversation. Whereas when we used to sit in front of the TV, we were all silent. We never spoke before. You know, I never really knew my dad growing up. He was a postman.
Right.
So we used to sit down and watch TV, and it was like really, we used to love programs. We used to like Scrap Heap Challenge and all that sort of stuff. We never used to speak about it too much.
Because you'd be too busy watching it. But you do right. There's comfort there, though, just sitting together, isn't there? Is that not? They're warm memories, aren't they, or not? Or am I being a bit dewy-eyed?
Well, yeah, some of them are, some of them aren't. If we want to be teary-eyed about it, I love taking the good memories. But my father wasn't really a nice person, and I never really saw that. So
okay.
I'm not going to get into that by the by. But
you're sharing a lot of information in the course of a conversation about the telly.
Yeah, but this is the thing. We wouldn't be sharing that sort of information about getting to know each other if we were watching the telly.
I guess
the telly is the main focus point of the family. It's my best friend has 2 children.
Yeah,
and they have the TV, but they don't pay for the BBC. They don't watch the BBC or anything like that.
Right.
They know that their kids, who are coming into 10 years old now, are more connected to their parents than I ever was to mine.
Well, that absolutely fascinates me, and it delights me a bit. And I know one swallow does not a summer make, and the plural of anecdote is not data, but that's a few people now suggesting that things aren't getting worse. They are changing, but they may actually be getting better.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. It is getting better. For me as well, I took my dad to a festival for the first time.
Gosh. I've got to read out some texts here for you.
Yeah, of course.
Paul has written, board games, it's wide open, mate. Go on, kick it in. I don't know what he means. Dan in Chester has plug the games, James. Plug the game. You know you want to. I don't know what he's talking about either.
I think he's talking about the review and obviously the board game.
Here's another one from Darren. James, does he own the world's #1 board game? Darren, the truck driver on the M6. I don't know. What are these people talking about? Any ideas, Sam?
The world's #1 board game. Well, the most highly rated #1 board game is actually Pandemic.
Whoosh straight over his head. No, it's not that. I don't know why. What board game are they telling me to plug? Do you think?
Oh, I think it might be the one about a certain Thursday afternoon show.
There we go. Have you got that yet?
I think it might be that one. I haven't. No, it's not part of my catalogue. I know.
Right, that's it. Cut him off. Seriously, that's enough from Sam. Thank you. Have a great day. But I don't want him, but you're banned. He's absolutely banned from the programme. Of course, if you want to get yourself a copy of the Mystery Hour board game, mysteryhour.co.uk is the best place to go. I love that. I love that from Sam. That idea that, because I am being an old git and I'm going to have to guard against it. No one wants to listen to an old git on the radio every day. I'll be banging on about bicycle licences next. The idea that even though things are changing, it's not necessarily a change for the worse. It might be a change for the better. More on this, 0345 6060973, but also the whole nation watching something together. That probably is now gone, with a few precious exceptions. Dominic Ellis is here now with the headlines. 11:32 is the time. This is, as with all, quite often when we step a little bit back from the heavy end, from the deep end of the news, we're rather surprised by how delightful this conversation is. Here's another one that gives me hope rather than a growing sense of old gittery. That's a good word. I think you're wrong on the intergenerational thing, James. I instilled a deep love of popular culture in my kids growing up, and now in their 20s, they constantly recommend new shows to me and talk about things they've watched. And because it's all available online, I can catch up with them. It stimulates more conversation and family closeness because we don't watch together, and it stimulates their analytical thinking because they want to tell me what previous shows this new show is like and which shows it's different from, why it works and why I'll like it. That's a lovely message. Would it be patronising of me to compliment you upon your punctuation? That is. I know that these things don't matter so much. Oh, I've gone old gittery again. I just stepped back from old gittery for a couple of minutes and now I've dived back in again. But I care about punctuation. Sue me if you don't like it. That is a beautifully punctuated text message. And you don't even need to punctuate text messages. 11:33 is the time. Marcus texted, so James, my son bought me your excellent board game last Christmas. The only thing is I can't convince him or my wife to play it with me. Do you think it will be worth money in years to come? An unopened first edition. Honestly, Mark, no. I don't. Take it down the pub or something. That'd be great. That'd be a wonderful way to make new friends. Mandeep's in Uxbridge. Mandeep, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. A pleasure to speak to you.
We'll see.
It's always a pleasure to listen to you. It may not be to speak to you.
Thank you. I mustn't add that to my long list of repetitive catchphrases that no one except me enjoys. So we'll scratch that one immediately. What made you pick up the phone, Mandy?
Well, I picked up the phone based on what you mentioned earlier, that we are watching less TV or less broadcast television. And I think, in my personal example, what I found is, it's only my mum and I that, especially over the pandemic, we bonded more because we weren't spending time just watching TV and only partially engaging. We are watching more TV together, even though we are watching less TV overall. And I think a part of the advent of that, or what certainly helped, is multi-language programs that are being made by your OTT content providers, like your Netflixes and your Amazons and stuff, that are making global programs, so we can watch stuff together. Not that my mum's been here since the 70s. She understands and speaks perfect English. It's just the cultural relations.
I get that. Of course, I get that. I just, I mean, blimey, it's just the window I've never looked through, isn't it? So you're watching just different stuff together. Although you sound older, you're not 16 to 24, are you?
No, I'm like 40 myself.
Yeah, so there's another difference there. 16 to 24-year-olds are just not watching it anymore compared to older people and compared to what they used to do. There'll be outliers. There'll be like weird ones like, what's it? Love Island and things like that, which just post enormous figures and are going to be incredibly popular among 16 to 24-year-olds.
I think that 16 to 24-year-olds are still watching content that's made by traditional broadcasters anyway. You can get stuff on iPlayer, you get the 4 on-demand stuff as well. So I don't think the broadcasters have lost place in the whole sphere of television.
I called this wrong.
It's not a thing anymore.
I think because it made me miss my dad, I think that I allowed that sadness to actually start defining my approach to the whole story. I felt for me, reading this and missing my dad and thinking about what we would watch together, actually almost sort of injected sadness into my reading of the whole story. But it's not actually a sad story at 11:36. There's always time for the pendulum to swing back. But it's not a sad story necessarily, is it?
Well, I think you can maybe look at the other side of it. It was like, what kind of stuff would you have watched with your dad now if there was the way that content is available? And would you have spent more time together watching things and dissecting things together, as I imagine you guys probably would have?
And you'd have watched it at opposite ends of the country. You'd have watched it at opposite ends of the country at different times as well. So, yeah, I get this is not necessarily a sad development or a negative. And I don't know, is there, I mean, that royal family image of everyone sitting on the same sofa looking at the telly. I've done it as well, haven't I? I should have stuck with Socrates and Thucydides. The world turns, things change, but the eternals, the universal eternals, stay the same. Family time together survives. They're just not spending as much time together sitting on a sofa staring at a screen anymore. Ben's in Woking. Ben, what would you like to say?
James, good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm quite surprisingly uplifted by this conversation, as opposed to having my old gittery reconfirmed, which is what I was expecting.
I was originally going to call and say that I did fear that you were becoming something of a Greek philosopher.
Thank you.
But as I've been on hold listening to the chat,
yes,
you've moved on, and I'm delighted about that. And I want to cheer you up a little bit further, if I may.
Go on.
I lost my father when I was quite young. I was nearly 11. And I have those.
You haven't cheered me up so far. You haven't cheered me up so far, Ben. I'm very sorry to hear that.
I have those strong memories of watching, event television, event movies and things, the Christmas movie with my dad from when I was younger. And not only does streaming allow me to have the same experiences with my young children now, but I can also share with them the stuff I watched with my dad. So I showed my 6-year-old daughter Goonies, and other 80s adventures are available. But I showed my 6-year-old daughter Goonies, which I remember watching at a similar age with my dad 30-odd years ago.
Yeah. And
it was such an incredible experience, kind of getting to pass on that emotion to the next generation down. And that wouldn't necessarily have been possible without the streaming services.
And actually, it makes a bit of a nonsense of the phrase broadcast television, doesn't it? Because that could have been on at 6 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. You just didn't watch it via that avenue. You watched it via a streaming service, which means it doesn't count as broadcast television. It counts as a streaming service.
Of course, but the experiences, and that's what I was going to say originally, kind of when books first being published and they were across the board and people were starting to buy them, parents were worried that their kids were reading books instead of walking. And then when radio came along, people were worried that the kids were listening to the radio instead of reading books. And then the same with TV and the same with movies and the same with comic books and the same with video games.
Yeah.
We're just in that next stage of evolution. I don't think we have lost anything. I think we're simply at that next stage of entertainment consumption evolution.
And the older you are, the old is that a dog in the background?
Yeah, someone rang the doorbell and she's being very, very naughty, but she's shushed now.
Go and deal with either the doorbell or the dog. I love that, Ben. Thank you. You're right. I mean, I have to guard against this. And in fact, the topic I've got lined up for the next hour might be another example of it. I can't turn into someone who complains about change or even feels sad about change. I'm definitely not that person. I sometimes wonder whether I go too far the opposite way. But the story in the next hour is something that I was going to suggest to you is a rare example of change and progress actually being ridiculous. In the way that the Daily Mail will claim that all change and progress is ridiculous, from, I don't know, women getting jobs and wearing trousers right through to whatever they're getting cross about today, cyclists, I think. There is a story in the news today, you're probably already aware of it, that I cannot get my head around. But given that I've called this one so wrong as a consequence of my encroaching age, I'm now beginning to wonder whether I've called the other one wrong. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. Phil's in Chester. Phil, what would you like to say?
Agree with most of what all your callers are saying, James.
Yeah, I've got this wrong. Why have I got this so wrong? It's quite bizarre. It's not like me, he says, very arrogantly.
I've got an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Right.
Both great kids, really good education, love reading, love doing all the things they should do. But given the chance, they'd sit for hours in front of YouTube and just watch rubbish, as I see it, which is, and my little boy will watch guys playing video games on YouTube. So it's watching other people doing things.
Watching other people play games. I had a look at how much money some of those streamers make the other day.
Staggering.
No, it's off the flipping charts, mate, isn't it?
I know.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They play video and provide commentary as well.
Or open football cards.
Yeah.
Just sat there opening football cards, and they'll do it for hours and hours, and I just don't get it at all, and it drives me crazy, and I have to take them off. But the other really weird thing, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier on, me and my wife were looking through, and we constantly watching all kinds of different things, and we came across on Gold, Are You Being Served?
Right.
And Dad's Army, and a few other bits like that. And
you don't have to go on Gold for Dad's Army. It's on BBC Two every night. It often feels, has been for 40 years.
But Are You Being Served? And my 8-year-old and 11-year-old are laughing like crazy to it.
Do they love it?
Yeah.
That was one of the ones one of the first ones that made me feel I understood adult humour. I should have put that on the list as well. I loved that show.
Yeah, and it's so of its time, obviously. And some of the things they say make you cringe. They're like, oh my God, how can they still play that nowadays? But
of course.
And the kids say, why were they saying that? But, anyway, the principle remains, it's watching something which is genuinely, innocently funny on TV.
I love
it. Very little of that out now.
No, I mean, well, is it true? Is it something that there's nothing that you could watch? I mean, you'd watch a movie, wouldn't you? You'd watch Harry Potter or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a TV show that's probably why Death in Paradise is on the list. Yours are a little young, but there's nothing rude in that. The death is always quite sanitized. It's not grisly or gory, so when they're a little bit older you might watch that together. But
even things like Deadly 60 and sort of educational stuff and natural history stuff,
what are the big sitcoms at the moment?
For them,
for all of us, that we would watch together in the same way that we might have watched Are You Being Served with our parents, and now you watch it with your kids 8 and 11. What are the big sitcoms at the moment?
It's not really a sitcom. The last one we watched together and they loved was Merlin.
Was it? It was a good show. Not a sitcom,
though. Fantastic show. Yeah, not a sitcom, no at all.
But serial drama. I suppose the last massive sitcom was My Family. Do you think the Robert Lindsay one?
Probably.
The last truly huge British sitcom. I mean, the girls watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine like it's going out of fashion. In fact, they could probably, if they ever lost the tapes, I think my daughters could probably reenact the whole thing from memory. But I think probably we're back to Full Disclosure guests. It's almost as if all the major television moments of the last decade have been reflected by having their stars appear on the Full Disclosure interview series, because Robert was a very recent guest on Full Disclosure, and Eddie Marsan, the star of The Thief, His Wife and the Canoe, is a former guest this year guest on Full Disclosure. Ralph Little, star of Death in Paradise, did it during lockdown. Who else do I need? Who else would I get from that list? Call the Midwife. Miriam Margolis is in Call the Midwife, isn't she? And she's appeared on Full Disclosure. I'll tell you what, it sounds good, that Full Disclosure, but it's not broadcast. It's something you do instead of watching TV. And I'll tell you exactly how old I am. I say that phrase there, and in the back of my mind there's a song being sung. Why don't you go out and do something less boring instead? And either you know or you don't know. If you know, you know. I've got a 28-year-old colleague looking at me as if I'm speaking Mandarin. Seriously, why don't you go out and do something less boring instead? That just speaks of the school holidays. It's 11:47. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, and it's very gratifying. I'm glad that we've done it the right way round. You look at a story and you think, that's sad. Things are going to be different from how they were in my day, and different must mean worse. That's a nice little line to remember. Different doesn't mean worse. Different hardly ever means worse. Things generally change for a reason, and that reason is generally progress. Although the topic in the next hour is possibly a bridge too far for that philosophy to hold true. So young people now watch almost 7 times less broadcast television than people aged over 65. And for some reason, I automatically started missing my dad. And as soon as that, and the reason for that was because I automatically started thinking about all the programs we watched together. And of course, we do things differently now. And different doesn't mean worse. In fact, for many of you, and you've got me on board now, it actually might mean better. Lots of sitcom recommendations coming in now. I meant the whole family. You can't watch The In-Betweeners with the kids, can you? And in fact, it gets worse as they get older. So that's not a very helpful one. Friday Night Dinner, similarly, I think. So in terms of like a sitcom that could have sat in any of the last 5 decades, the last big one would have been My Family, which was absolutely huge and for my money, brilliant. 11:48 is the time. A little bit more on this. The sort of national event thing. I think that hasn't gone away either. You think of sporting events. What about the Women's World Cup? What sort of numbers did that get? Not the World Cup, the Euros. That was a huge audience, wasn't it? That was one of the biggest audiences of the year. So we all do stop as a nation and still watch broadcast television, but we now do it for events that are in a very specific space and time. Whereas previously, unless it was like JR getting shot or something like that on Dallas, previously we might have had moments of national engagement, but it was because we couldn't watch them at any other time that we all watched them at the same time. So your moments of national engagement will be things like the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, or a massive sporting event like the final of the Euros. The Euros, it will be sport or pageantry. It won't be an episode of a series, because you might watch it at 4:00 on a Thursday and your mum might watch it at 9:00 on a Tuesday. And then when you meet up on Friday, you can both talk about it. So this is nice. And yes, an awful lot of you also offering up Outnumbered, which brings me back to Full Disclosure, because of course the creator and the co-creator and author of Outnumbered, Andy Hamilton, has also appeared on Full Disclosure this year. So I think it's just uncanny. It's almost like everybody who's everybody. Salman Rushdie was on it during lockdown as well. And very good to see that he's now recovering in New York State. 10 to 12 is the time. A little bit more on this, and then I'll tell you what the story... You've guessed already, haven't you? The story that has even Mr. Woke Man going, I don't know what's happening. Help. I don't get this. I don't understand this story. Please help me. And I am, as christened by one of the crazier Conservative MPs, Mr. Woke Man himself. Ben's in Hales Owen. Ben, do you want to know something funny?
Always, James.
Thank you. So you know that I grew up in Kidderminster. Mm-hmm. I don't know that my colleague today knows where Hales Owen is, because she has very helpfully put Hales Owen brackets pronounced Hales Owen close brackets. And it's a given that I grew up about 5 miles down the road. That's one little bit of pronunciation guidance I don't think I would ever need. What's on your mind today?
Well, first of all, Not Going Out, I think, is very long-running, very successful. Although, would my young children watch it?
No.
I'd let them, but no, they wouldn't. But I think this brings me on to my wider point, really, James. So, yes, there are some lovely advantages that have been highlighted today of streaming, but that isn't where a lot of young people's time is being spent. No. It is being spent on YouTube. And my fear, and I'm seeing it, and I've seen it in my stepdaughter who's in her early 20s, and I'm having to try and combat it with my own daughters who are 9 and 6.
Yes.
What it's bringing about is shorter attention spans. We're going to see a death of creativity. And also, James, we are going to have a generation that isn't fit to communicate at work. Shouting at a camera to yourself is not a communication skill.
Well, you're a bit of a party pooper, aren't you? You're a bit of a fun sponge. I was just marshalling my forces for good on this one and moving away from the old gittery. But you raised some interesting points. I don't know that Zoom is going to have such a deleterious effect on people.
It's not. Sorry, James. It's not Zoom.
Oh.
This is where people think they can be not even trying to be influencers, do they? You know, they sit on in their rooms and they talk at the camera and they expect likes and subscribers. Hey guys, press like.
Yeah, but
it's also dangerous, James. I mean,
but didn't you do things that your dad found baffling when you were young?
I'm sure I did, but I didn't expect other people to watch me do them.
No, but I mean, just to knit the two things together, I think my dad was always slightly baffled by the amount of time I spent playing video games, and yet now you make millions of dollars a year inviting people to watch you play video games. So I'm just suggesting, cautioning you against undue negativity. It may well be that this all irons itself out in the wash.
I don't think it's undue negativity. I think
I know you don't.
I think we're going to see a real deficit in communication skills because of what is happening.
But an earlier caller said that the same arguments were made about television, even about books, about the printing press. So that's going to stop people talking to each other, and television is going to stop people talking to each other.
What's an important part of conversation, James? An important part of conversation is also listening. Yes, exactly. It's listening, right? And unfortunately, with YouTube, everybody's more interested in what they've got to say than what it gives everybody a voice. Great, it's democratic, but that is not good art. right? It kills creativity. It kills skills. And I think, there's a happy medium. YouTube can be a really good thing. You can find out how to do things on there.
Yeah.
But, at some point, as parents, we have to just start pushing back.
I'm not going to argue with you, but I honestly think you are simply the 2022 equivalent of previous generations of parents talking about other things, whether it was video games or videos. Video films. I'd really...
James, it's there in the mental health issues that you're seeing with young people today. I ask people when they employ and interview younger people, these skills, all the diagnoses, these things, are not helped by the media they are consuming, and to just dismiss it.
No, I'm not dismissing it. I'm just reminding you that similar arguments have been made about all other media as it has risen to the fore. But you sound a timely voice of caution, Ben, and I guess it depends partly on what your children's relationship with the technology is going to inform how worried or not you are about what's going on. I know nothing, for example, of influencers, so clearly that's something that's got your goat. It's not something that really exists much in my world. But I know what it is, and I do look at, again, some of the numbers and feel a little bit baffled about how can you do that when you're just offering up cleaning tips. But I think that this is, again, just difference not necessarily meaning worse. On some fronts, it almost certainly will. Hussein's in Leicester. Hussein, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello, Hussein.
First time on. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
It's an interesting subject. It prompted me to ring in. I'm probably the dad you're talking about at the start of the show. And so I'm 67, and I've been in this country since Match of the Day first started. So, I can relate to a lot of what's been said already, and particularly one or two of the callers earlier. Now, excuse me, it's interesting. The sitcoms, for example, like the best one ever was Fawlty Towers for me.
Oh, John Cleese is on Full Disclosure next week. This is getting uncanny. This is getting weird, Hussein. Everything.
Yeah.
Whoa, what a series Full Disclosure is shaping up to be. So, yes, John Cleese sitting down with me on Monday.
That was a national event, from what I remember. It was something you just didn't miss in the mid-70s, on a Sunday night, 7:30. Before that...
but has it gone? I don't want to sound ungrateful. I don't just need a list of big sitcoms from history. Has it left a hole in your family?
Just bear with me.
I will.
What I'm going to say is that today's generation, I'm a fortunate one. I'm very fortunate that I have my grandchildren living just down the road from me. And they're in and out of my house, and I'm in and out of theirs. And
that's nice.
I think something one of the previous callers said that they've got intelligence.
People are getting ruder. Hang on, you're not really supposed to say that word. That's twice this week. No, it's fine. We had an even ruder one on earlier. Everyone's sounding ever so casual. And then just dropping these little effing and jeffings into the conversation. No, Can we all just stop it, please? Because it's me that gets... It's not you that gets into trouble, Hussein. No one comes round yours and that look on their face like a slap backside and go, oh, James, we're going to have a bit of a chat about Ofcom. It's me that gets it in the neck, mate, all right?
Sorry, apologies.
Carry on.
Carry on. Anyway, they watch this kind of stuff. And I think to myself, oh, my God,
yes.
why are you doing this? So one day I was watching something about Dad's Army, the making of Dad's Army, and they had that clip of where it says, don't tell him, Pike. And
don't tell him your name. Don't tell him your name, Pike.
And my grandson was in the room and he heard it. And he was howling.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I thought, oh, this is interesting. So I recorded a whole bunch of it. And we sat through it. And then I went to make a cup of tea on one occasion. And it was Corporal Jones waking up, Mannering and saying, permission to wake you up. It was...
that's timeless humour, isn't it? That, in a way, is a very healthy reminder, Hussein, that proper humour, proper comedy is utterly, utterly timeless. And so if you introduce it into the lives of a younger person, then you will and get the results that you've got. Thank you, mate. I'm moving on only so I can squeeze in one more. And with the online stuff, I think we touched yesterday on some of the absolute bilge and sewage that is out there, particularly the stuff that's corrupting the minds of young men. But equally, a few of you are upset with the suggestion that there's a dearth of creativity. There is an astonishing blooming, a blossoming of creativity online, and an awful lot, of course, of it is via YouTube. But that's what I kind of mean. It's like any other medium. There'll be good and there'll be bad. The only thing is that when it's new, some of us get taken by surprise by the bad. Katie's in Hereford. I can only give you a minute, Katie. Make it good.
Yeah, I have a lot to say. So I'm a teacher, secondary, and I feel that we're alienating young boys by shutting off and downplaying social media.
Yeah, you might be right.
I find it incredibly creative. I have a family. My son, he started his own channel during lockdown. As a family, we helped him. He's a musician, and he's also very creative, does a lot of animation
and that's all done online. I mean, my friend James McVeigh's band, The Vamps, got put together because of YouTube videos. I mean, it's a hive of activity and creativity.
Yeah, and I don't like this thought that it's stifling creativity, because he's very creative, and I don't want to give away too much about his age, but he's not in secondary yet.
Okay.
And he actually does his own tutorials.
Oh, fantastic.
He's learned a lot, so he's actually giving. And I also have my own channel.
Oh, we've run out of time.
I started during lockdown, and he helped me with the channel.
Oh, so that's lovely. So you've got a bonding experience as well, in the same way that I was getting a bit dewy-eyed about watching telly with my dad. So hopefully my daughter will get dewy-eyed about remembering when we made YouTube videos together for her when she was obsessed with slime. I love it. Thank you, Katie. And I'm sorry I didn't have a little longer for you to contribute. That went a bit busier than I expected. Well, it's always busy, but I just went off in directions I wasn't quite expecting. And the same thing happened yesterday with the conversation about, again, it was informed by online stuff about lonely men and increasing kind of misogyny online. The next story is one of the strangest stories I think I've ever seen, and it knits together all of the fears I've just been expressing about old gittery and wondering whether differences change. But I'm not going to tell you what it is until after the very latest news. It is 4 minutes after 12, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we turn our attention next to, I think, okay, all right, you can tell what's happening at the moment since I've turned 50. I think a few of you have pointed out that one of the reasons why people may have got a little bit more potty-mouthed on the radio on this programme is because I've started using that B word, not that B word, the other B word, a little bit more than I did. And you're right, I'm going to have to stop. I'm going to go back to blumming, Keith, all right? I'm going to go back to blumming. Because I think it creates an air where you probably think you can say certain words that you're not really. So let's try and keep it clean from now on. I shall. Thank you, fans. I shall try and reserve any even flirtation with profanity, the mildest flirtations with profanity. I was about to say I'll reserve it for when. I nearly swore again then. For when the excrement really hits the fan. But things are so bad at the moment, so spectacularly bad. That's probably why I've started using the B word a lot more to express the full scale of my feeling. But if you can't express the full scale of your feeling without reaching for foul language, then you have a problem of articulacy and vocabulary, not a problem of delivery. So leave that with me. I'll stop doing that, and then you can stop swearing as well, because it will get me into terrible trouble one of these days. I mention that because it seems to coincide with when I turned 50 in January. And something else I'm beginning to notice on the programme, and I probably pay a little bit more attention to it than you do, is this fear that I'm developing of turning into one of those people who's constantly complaining about change. I think the fact that I'm fearful of becoming that person is the best guard or the best insulation against ever becoming that person. But, I mean, we all know one, don't we? We probably know several. It's just, I don't like that. It's not how... It's the Daily Mail made flesh. They're doing things differently now. I don't like that. I think the best example recently was the women's football. Not just the success of the Lionesses, but the commonplace nature now of having pundits in studios who are women and lineswomen on football pitches, even in men's games. Not many female referees yet, but there will be. And when that first happened, they all had a fit of the vapours. I don't know if you remember. I used to, at this point, reach for 3 names as illustrations of the kind of mindset I was describing, and it was almost always the case. If someone with one of these 3 names rang in, they would be a supporter of UKIP, if we went back a decade. Roger, Derek and Nigel. So all the Rogers, Dereks and Nigels were absolutely certain that football would never be the same again once they started allowing female pundits into the studio. And you can't have female lines, but they're not strong enough. All this sort of thing. There's a little echo of it yesterday with the Graham Souness story, talking about football being a man's game. Although, for the record, I thought he was a little bit unfairly treated, given the context of what he said and the circumstances. But I don't want to become a Roger, a Derek, or a Nigel. I don't want to be someone who every time something new emerges, I feel a bit threatened by it. And I think the reason why you feel threatened by change as you get older, and I've only realised this as I've got older, is because it reminds you of your own mortality. Oh, it's changed. Somehow, if everything stays the same, you're less conscious of the passage of time. What was it Larkin said, Keith, about that? It reminds us what is left to come and dulls to distance all we are. That is a bleak line of poetry. Reminds us what is left to come and dulls to distance all we are. So all we are is a ticking clock, a stopwatch coming down, into a timer ticking down. Well, that's all we are. Dulls to distance. The distance between now and the end, that's all we are. That's what Larkin's writing about. Reminds us what is left. God, try and get a bit more upbeat, would you, O'Brien? For heaven's sake. It's not my fault. Larkin wrote the poem. Don't shoot the messenger. Dulls to... How's the whole of that verse? There at last begins to loosen, far from the exchange of love, to lie unreachable inside a room, the traffic parts to let go by. Dulls to distance. Yeah. Reminds us what is left to come and dulls to distance all we are. All right, sorry, I'll stop now. Still got no idea what topic we're going to be talking about. So the reason why, as you get older, you become a little bit more frightened by change is that I think it reminds you of your own mortality. It dulls to distance all we are and reminds us what is left to come. And I caught myself today looking at a story and feeling absolutely banjaxed. I mean, I looked at it, and then I looked at something else, and then I looked at it again, and then I looked at something else, and then I looked at it, and I just thought, I cannot make head nor tail of this story. And then I noticed it was trending on Twitter under, astonishing phrase. And I've looked at it again. I've read it in 3 or 4 different newspapers. I read it in the Times. I read it in the Guardian. I read it in the Mail even. And I just don't know what to make of it. Head nor tail. Are you ready for this? There have been many accusations of mansplaining in recent weeks, including one by Liz Truss aimed at Rishi Sunak. Now, the ultimate example may have emerged with the news that a man has been appointed to the job of period dignity officer. I'm not going to lie to you, I checked the date. Just very quickly. I know it's the middle of August, but I did think for a minute perhaps it's April the 1st, because if it is, that's a brilliant April Fool's joke, given all of the brouhaha surrounding transgender issues and surrounding the definition of womanhood and this weird habit some people have developed of asking the world and his wife whether or not a woman can have a penis and all this sort of thing. I just thought that's a good one. That's a good old chain yank. And then I thought, no, mate, it's the middle of August. It's got nothing to do with April Fool's Day. Not unless they've changed that as well. Blooming progressives. And a former personal trainer has been appointed to the role of period dignity officer in the Tay region of Scotland. And it coincides with a new law that's coming in that will, and it's a brilliant law, that will allow councils, schools and colleges in Scotland, you know, this is the government that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak thinks that they need to somehow scrutinise more, that this coincides with a law that will offer free feminine hygiene products in councils, schools and colleges in Scotland. It's a 35 grand a year job. And it will include, it says here, implementing the legislation, managing projects addressing period poverty in Tayside. He'll also discuss sanitary products in schools and colleges. He told a paper in Dundee, the Courier, is that a DC Thompson paper? I think it might be. Anyway, he told the Courier in Dundee, I'm absolutely buzzing about it. It's definitely pioneering, as Scotland is the first to do this. It's about making people aware of the availability of period products for anyone of any gender whenever they need it. Martina Navratilova is among the many people to be a little bit bamboozled by this. She's great on Twitter, Martina Navratilova. You can tell that because she regularly retweets me. She says she branded the move effing ridiculous, tweeting, "Have we ever tried to explain to men how to shave or how to take care of their prostate or whatever?" To which Martina, the answer is yes, actually, quite often. The prostate is something that will be raised in a doctor's surgery. They're not exclusively by men. There'll be adverts on the telly telling you about your prostate, and they won't necessarily have been made exclusively by men. But here we are. I tell you when my story wobbled a bit. The story wobbled a bit for me when I read the clearly sincere and undiluted pleasure that this fella has in doing the job that he's doing. And I don't think that is weird on reflection. I think he sees it as a crusade. I could get quite passionate about period poverty. The idea that one of my daughters explained to me of there being a code word, I think in Morrison's, is it in one of the supermarkets, where you say a word which conveys to the pharmacist that you can't afford sanitary products, and they provide you with some complementary sanitary products. I'll get you the detail of that. And I found that heartbreaking when we, try and find out what the local food bank needs more than other stuff. Quite often, sanitary products will be on the list, and they're not cheap. Oh, when you share you're only bloke in a house, and you often do the weekly shop, you're conscious of the cost of these things. And so I can get quite passionate about period poverty. And it made me develop some sympathy for Jason Grant, who's the fellow who's got this job. But he's now taking a kicking from all quarters. He's taking either mockery or befuddlement or a degree of anger in Martina Navratilova's case and other cases. But I think in a world where we truly have equality, then he has to be able to apply for the job, doesn't he? I mean, you have male midwives. Most gynecologists are male. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, perhaps we'll explore a little together now. But you can't say you can't apply for the job because you're a man, any more than you could say to a woman you can't apply for a job as a pilot, for example, or whatever it may be. And if he applied for the job and the people doing the job interviews decided he was the best applicant, what are they supposed to do? This is what they say. The Period Dignity Working Group said this new role, funded by the Scottish Government, was created to promote and implement new legislation specifically focused on project management. The job is to get the information in front of the people and the products into the places. Jason was the strongest candidate by changing the culture, encouraging debate and removing the stigma around periods. We look forward to supporting the delivery of this important work across the region. And do you know, if you're encouraging the debate, changing the culture and removing the stigma around periods, then it's mission flipping accomplished, isn't it? Everybody's talking about it. Today it's in every newspaper in the country. And I've done it again. I've started off doing an introduction. I've got to the end of it and I've changed my mind. I can't carry on like this. This is ridiculous. I'm like a weather vane. It's pathetic. People tune into this programme for my pungent opinions. I can't keep changing them every 10 minutes. But it was the line from Jason himself when he said, "I'm absolutely buzzing about it. It's definitely pioneering, as Scotland is the first to do it. Why shouldn't a man be evangelical about period poverty? Why shouldn't a man be appointed to the role of period dignity officer?" Oh, you tell me. 0345 6060 973. So there you've got it. All human life is here. I've gone in the space of 13 minutes from thinking this is one of the daftest things I've ever heard to realising that you can't exclude men from applying. You just presume that women would do a better job at interview of getting the gig, to realising at the end that he was the best person they interviewed. And the fact that he was a man arguably makes him an even better candidate than a woman, because everyone's going to be talking about it. And what are they going to be talking about? They're going to be talking about his job. And what is his job? To encourage the debate, remove the stigma and change the culture. You can't change the culture much more than... Well, anyway, what do you think? 0345 6060 973. I'm allowed to say flipping. It's flipping and blumming are fine, aren't they? I'm just not going to say... That's a bit appropriate, actually, in the circumstances, isn't it? 16 minutes after 12 is the time. 0345 6060 973. Just women to start with on this one, which I think I'm allowed to do without breaking any discrimination laws, but I'll double check during the junction. What do you think? Have you, like me, gone full circle on this? I mean, why shouldn't a man do this job? 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need. Hit those numbers. Now you will get through. 18 minutes after 12 is the time. Want to talk about period poverty? Want to know more about period poverty? We have just the man. What do we think about the appointment of a man to the role of period dignity officer in Scotland? And remember that your initial answer to that question may change as you learn more about the role and the individual concerned. According to the interviewing panel, he was the strongest candidate. The job involves changing the culture, encouraging debate and removing the stigma. Why would a man be any less equipped to do that job than a woman? In which case, explain the discombobulation that I and presumably many other people feel at the merest mention of the masculinity of the new period dignity officer in the Tay region of Scotland. Hit the numbers now. Well, actually, yeah, you should get through. There's one phone line free, 0345 60973. We're taking a bit of time here because all my phone lines have been taken up by men, which says it all. I'm going to have to talk to one of them. Tom's in Castleford. Tom, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah, thank you for having me
Glenn,
on.
Can I just begin by, what was it about me saying I only want to talk to women? Because literally every phone line into the studio now has been taken up by a man. So just talk me through that first.
To be honest, I didn't hear you say you only wanted to talk to women, so apologies for that.
That's all right, mate. Apologies for having a sore head. What made you pick up the phone?
Yeah, no, so I think you're right. This is the kind of story where your initial reaction is different to what you actually might end up thinking when you take some time thinking about it. And I've not had time. This is the first I've heard about it when you mentioned it like 15 minutes ago, so I've not had time to digest and form a fully formed opinion yet. But my initial reaction was, it recalled the memory of the sex education that I had when I was in secondary school. I went to a fairly good school. Well, I thought it was a fairly good school anyway, fairly progressive. But when we had our sex education, I think in year 8 or year 9, the way that they did it is they split us up. Boys went into one classroom, the girls went into another. What we were taught about was completely different.
What year was that? What year was that?
Oh, God. That would have been 2008, 2009.
Good grief. Separate classrooms for boys and girls on sex education.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, to avoid embarrassment and to allow them to ask questions that they may not want to ask in front of boys or they may not want to ask in front of girls. But for every class, that seems a bit backwards.
There's definitely value to it, and I can't remember if it was every single class or not, but there was definitely a division. But what your story made me realise was that when I was in secondary education, I never received any education regarding periods, regarding menstruation. The things that happen to a woman's body, the actual.
I don't think it's about that. I mean, you did kindly establish you weren't fully across the facts. It's not really about helping you and me understand more about periods, particularly. It's about helping women understand that there's help there for them if they can't afford hygiene products. But you make a good point about, knowledge being power, information being power. 21 minutes after 12 is the time. Cherry is in Swindon. Cherry, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. I went through the same sort of thinking process as I think you did.
Yes.
Of kind of my initial reaction was, this is ridiculous.
Yes.
Why are they putting a man in charge of something that's so much to do with women? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, actually, I think this is a really good thing because, not just that, why shouldn't he be in charge of it? Because if we're egalitarian, then why shouldn't a man be in charge of this process? But also, this is something that actually affects all of us. It's not just something for women, and the more we can be able to make that clear, I think actually showing that it affects everyone is really important.
Why does it switch? Why does it move? It's so bizarre, isn't it? Because I don't know if you heard it in real time, but the more I'd read it 3 times before I came on air this morning. I just found myself focusing on his words when he said, I'm really buzzing about this. I'm absolutely buzzing about it. And I just thought, I believe you. I believe you. And that evangelical tone was quite inspiring, oddly.
And I think it's really great to hear a man talk about periods in that way. I'm in my 60s. It wasn't something that was talked about outside of women really when I was kind of growing up. It was serious, dark, mysterious subject. And, men would never mention tampons or anything like that. And the idea of somebody speaking openly about it is just wonderful. So, yeah, I think I'm all in favour, actually.
And would you go as far as to say that him being a bloke actually enhances the role, makes it a more powerful appointment than if it had been a woman?
I do think it's helpful, yeah.
Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder that as well. Well, what a turn up for the books, eh, Cherry?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we talk about this stuff in the hope of coming to a better understanding of it. Chris is in Wakefield. Says, I'm assuming these people don't know what a project manager does. Project management is an exciting career choice and one that is in demand throughout each industry. As a project manager, it will be your job to plan, budget, oversee and document all aspects of a specific project or projects within a company. You will need to thrive under pressure and be highly organised in order to be successful. A definition from Prince 2 Project Manager's qualification. People are acting like this man's going out and giving advice and products. His job is to lead the team that will be specialists and stakeholders within the project. It's like saying a man can't be in charge of a breast cancer charity. The person running these things isn't the person that people being helped or using the service will be dealing with. Again, he's not running the coalface. He's the manager to ensure that people get the support and the help they need. I think that's mostly true. I think there might be a little bit of the stuff you said there wouldn't be in it, Chris, but we need someone to come along and start reminding us to give our heads a wobble and why this is absolutely ridiculous. And Martina Navratilova is absolutely right. Emma is in Horsham. Emma, what would you like to say?
I'm in complete agreement with your previous caller, Jane.
Well, I never.
I could not give a monkey's what sex the person is that does this job. I'm a menopausal blogger and author, funny enough.
Oh, yes.
So I highlight the stigma surrounding the menopause, and my main aim is to get men more involved. Now that's an aside, but I have two daughters who menstruate, and we buy sanitary towels and tampons, and we talk about it openly. And if this man is the best qualified for the job to get women free sanitary towels and tampons, then good on him. Let him crack on. I could not give a monkey's what sex he is, quite frankly.
But it's also, I'm now quite uplifted that he wanted the job. I like that idea of him being passionate about it.
Good on him. Seriously, good on
him.
him.
I do remember, and it was Morrison's. One of my daughters told me that they'd launched this discreet new service to address the growing problem of period poverty, and it was like being hit around the face with a wet fish. The idea that there would be women, and of course I already knew because the food bank tell us that is very much on their list of things that we can donate. But you please don't feel shy. If you're in need or struggling for sanitary products, go to our customer service kiosk next to Timpson's and ask for a package that Sandy has left for you. You'll get a free discreet envelope with what you need. Now imagine if we were complaining that a man had come up with that idea, which would be the same as complaining about this, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say, good on the guy for stepping up. Yeah. And he knew, and bless him, if he knew this was going to cause controversy and therefore publicity and exposure, then even better on him. I take my hat off.
Part of the job. Well, that is the bit I'm beginning to wonder whether he actually thought, well, what better way of getting this issue front and centre than by me being the standard bearer.
I'd love to see a man to champion the menopause.
He's like a human cannonball.
Yeah, good on him.
What is the name of your blog?
The name of my blog is The Menopausal Mayhem Mothers.
Gosh.
It's a bit of fun, and I've written a best-selling book about my antics.
What's the book called?
The book is called Confessions of the Menopausal Mayhem Mother, and it's utterly ridiculous. It outsold Meghan Markle, which because I think I didn't take myself too seriously. It did. I know, insane. But if we can shine a light on these things that have been stigmatised for years, and we do it with a guy, brilliant. I just think it's fantastic.
Did you think that immediately? Did you think that immediately, Emma Skeets?
Yes.
Because that is who you are.
Yes, I did.
Really? Oh, you did not like me then? You didn't? Because I thought at first I went, whoa, what's all this about then? Wibble, wobble, wobble, jelly on a plate.
No. I absolutely not. Because and as I say, if somebody's actually had the brain cell, they've rubbed a couple of brain cells together and said, you know what, this is going to cause an absolute uproar, and it's going to end up on a radio show like LBC.
And then let's
do it. And he gets the job done. Then he gets
there is room for dissent, and actually you may not know this, but I've tried to do what you dream of a few times on the programme by bringing menopause and related issues to a broader audience. Because, I mean, to be honest, women who don't have a tough time in menopause are part of the audience that needs to know a lot more about it. Never mind men who know nothing about it. 28 minutes after 12 is the time. Thank you, Emma. Emma's book, Confessions of the Menopausal Mayhem Mother, is available now, paperback or Kindle. In fact, I think it's a special offer on Kindle at the moment. Helen is in Sheffield. Helen, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello, Helen.
When you first said about this guy taking on the job, I kind of went, oh, that was my first bit weird.
Yeah.
And my husband was with me, and he said,
Do that noise again. Do that noise again. Ooh.
It was just like weird. But my husband, ironically, he's off work, bless him, and he said, why did you do that? He said, power to him.
Really?
And it's not until he's actually just pointed something out, because last year, sadly, my husband had prostate cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And he said, no, it's fine, he's got through it.
Good.
He said, the best team I had around me for erectile dysfunction, when you've had your prostate removed, were all women.
Well, there you go. Isn't that interesting? So when...
Sorry, go on.
No, I was interrupting you. You crack on.
No, he just said he's probably felt more comfortable discussing, because obviously it was very in depth, as it would be, and he said he felt more comfortable. There was a support group for guys suffering with it, sort of post-op, and he said, and it was all run by women nurses, and they were absolutely amazing. And
might
he said,
find it easier to talk to women than men, actually, because we're a funny old bunch, aren't we? So Martina Navratilova, when she thought she was serving an ace, Helen, when she said, have we ever tried to explain to men how to take care of their prostate or whatever, she was actually barking up the wrong. That was a double fault from Martina Navratilova, I think. It
really was, and it sort of slapped me in the chops, because I went, oh, and then my husband sort of pulled me up by the shorts, and I said,
give your head a wobble, have a bit of a rethink. You've taken me right up to the news, Helen. I love that. I hope your husband gets better. I think you said he was off work, so he was feeling a bit poorly. Amelia Cox is here now with your headlines. 33 minutes after 12. We've got a bit of a weird situation on our hands at the moment, that there is currently a consensus on this, and everyone's been on exactly the same journey as me. So I do want you to feel welcome and very warmly invited to explain why you wouldn't want a male period dignity officer going anywhere near you or your daughter when it comes to explaining what periods are likely to involve. Because it's not quite as simple as our project manager fan suggested. Jason Grant is engaging in one-to-one interactions. At least I think he is, because Sheila's posted a picture of him actually doing the job. I don't think Sheila's a fan, as far as I can tell. This man is explaining to a girl and her mother how best to approach periods and self-care around periods. He's a periods dignity officer. Now picture him as a priest, rabbi, imam. It's weird, isn't it? It is weird. But I now understand it. I've made a lot more sense of it. It doesn't mean I'm right. I could easily be wrong. Let's have a look at some of the text, and then we'll hit the phones. I'm Scottish. I'm astounded by the reaction of people like Martina Navratilova. They're clearly completely uninformed. The policy has been in place for a while now. Free sanitary products appeared in my workplace a while ago, about a year back, I think. What about giving a bit of credit to the Scottish Government for bringing this in? I remember Westminster being asked to take VAT off sanitary products as long ago as Thatcher's time, and she refused. Edinburgh, as ever, is way ahead of Westminster in terms of social policies. If the appointment of this man to this role has brought it to the attention of the English population, then all is well and good. Perhaps try and persuade your MPs to do something similar. And on a completely different tip, but I think a valid one, a bit of, is it unhappiness? I think it's unhappiness at the idea of a man. It's taken a man to bring it to the forefront like this. So Jennifer says, a man in charge of period poverty. I've got mixed feelings, but I keep coming back to a quote I read relating to all equality matters. It's not about me if it's without me. I'd like to know about the team supporting and working for him. And that idea that you had to appoint a man to draw the level of attention that it's drawing, I mean, is that a bit of a red herring? I don't know. I honestly don't know. The notion that it should have been front and centre and it should have been a very big issue anyway. Yeah, that's true, but I don't think that the two stories cancel each other out. It's about the world that we live in. And if you want the British media to take notice of this appointment, appoint a man. quod erat demonstrandum. Kim's in Colchester. Kim, what would you like to say?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to bring up the point. A lot of people were comparing him to, like, we have doctors, gynecologists who are male. The difference is they are highly trained people who have been to medical school. They've got first-hand experience, real-world experience of treating people who have periods.
Yes.
So this man, although, he might be a good project manager, he might have all of those skills, what skills and understanding does he have about the actual process itself?
That would be the job of the Period Dignity Working Group to establish when they interviewed him, and they've said he was the strongest candidate.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things I'm struggling with, that there wasn't...
If you just got a job and the people who interviewed you said you were the strongest candidate, you wouldn't want someone ringing up the radio going, well, I don't know about that. Do you see what I mean? I mean, you've got to take their word for it. I mean, they're not going to have hired him. No, it's my bad. I should have mentioned it a bit earlier. I completely understand your point, but you have to take it in good faith that the Period Dignity Working Group, who said this new role was created to promote and implement new legislation specifically focused on project management, Jason was the strongest candidate. By changing the culture, encouraging debate and removing the stigma around periods, we look forward to supporting the delivery of this important work across the region. Has that calmed your quibbles?
No.
No, I know why. It still feels a bit weird.
Something there. Yes, it does. It's done the job where everyone's speaking about it, which is really good. I think it's something that, England and Wales should be looking at doing.
Did you know about it before today?
Yes, I did, because I used to donate. It was in England.
No, but in Scotland, did you know that they're changing the law in Scotland to do this?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah,
I missed that. I think I'd forgotten.
Period poverty is something that I'm,
okay,
very aware of, and that. But yeah, there's just something that still doesn't quite sit right.
I get that completely, and I kind of, I suppose, speaking to you, I can feel it bubbling back up again, but it's hard to pin down or articulate precisely what it is. You have to presume he's got the qualifications because the interviewing panel both appointed him and described him as the best candidate. And yet that photograph of him I don't know how big a part of the job that will actually be, reading these comments from the Period Dignity Working Group, and it says that it's new legislation, the role is specifically focused on project management, strongest candidate, encouraging debate, changing culture, removing stigma. How much actual one-on-one interactions with women that will involve, I guess, is something we would need to know if we were to remove those quibbles, Kim. Annie's in Warrington. Annie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Welcome aboard. We've got the lingo off pat.
Basically, I'm very much in support of this, and I've got an anecdote for you that might give you some insight into my feelings on it. Because I used to work a few years ago for a company where I was looking after a team of apprentices. They were sort of 16 to 19 years old, mostly boys, few girls. That morning, I got my period unexpectedly.
Yes.
And didn't have any sanitary products with me. And it was not long after we changed the pound coins. So the machines in the ladies' toilets where you could get some had not been updated to the new pound coins. So I wasn't able to get any from there. So I went back into the office and was asking around. It was purely around the girls, but was asking the girls whether they had any, even though I know these days a lot of young lads do carry sanitary products around with them, as it's a good way to...
Do they?
Yeah. Oh, no, it happens quite a lot. There's a big thing about it where young lads carry sanitary towels because it tends to be a good way in, for getting chatting to girls, and it gives a good impression to them.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure? All right, I'm back where I was at 12 o'clock now. I'm feeling completely discombobulated and banned. But men carry around sanitary towels as a sort of icebreaker for conversations with women.
Yeah, some do. I mean, it's not hugely common, but it does happen.
Live and learn.
But I was asking around the girls, and I got called in by my manager, who gave me a reprimand saying I shouldn't be talking about such things in front of young, impressionable young boys. Oh. And I was thinking, I was fuming, absolutely fuming. I didn't last much longer in that job, I must admit.
That's incredible. And I mean, I'm not defending him. I'm really not defending him. But he is just... he's talking about himself. You know that. He's just very uncomfortable with this conversation.
It was actually a woman.
What?
It was a woman, yeah. It was my man.
I don't know that I've ever been surprised twice in the course of a conversation as much as I've been surprised by you, Annie, on one call. It was a woman?
Yep.
What was her problem then? You knew her, I don't.
Well, she said it was inappropriate and, would make the young lads feel uncomfortable.
Well,
I spoke to them afterwards about it, and not one of them said they felt uncomfortable about it at all.
No, of course they didn't. Did you have beef with this woman before this occasion occurred? I mean, could that be it? I mean, could it be that she was just looking for reasons to give you a hard time rather than being particularly perturbed by the prospect of you having these conversations in the workplace?
Well, we hadn't got on brilliantly because we had different opinions about certain things, but it wasn't. That was when it started to go properly downhill after that, because I thought she was being completely unreasonable.
That's an absolute shocker, which I think means I know what you're going to say. What do we think then about this appointment of a fella to this job?
I think it's a great thing, because if you can get boys talking about it as well, then, it makes it something that isn't stigmatised anymore. Because my argument to her at the time was, well, if I'd got a cold and had a very runny nose, would you be offended if I started asking around the office if anyone had any tissues?
And what did she say?
Glared at me and told me to get out.
I had a boss like that once. 12:42, Annie, thank you. And I guess that's it. If what you're trying to do is encourage conversation and destigmatise menstruation, then, oh man, I'm worried that I'm mansplaining. I'm so glad that almost all the callers have been women this hour, but I am a little bit perturbed by I assumed the manager was a man because of the discomfort surrounding menstruation. I don't think there was any casual sexism going on there. I'm much more surprised by a woman being uncomfortable with the issue of menstruation than I would be by a man, which is part of the reason why the appointment of a man, the more we talk about it, appears potentially visionary, but also I do still get troubling. What an amazing revelation! That apparently it's true. Emma has told me that it's not ice-breaking exactly, it's just that young lads nowadays are pretty switched on and helpful. It's just a very odd thing to put. Also, men don't have handbags. Where do you keep it? Where Maeve's with me on this one. She goes, that's it, I've heard it all now. Men carrying sanitary stuff just in case I need a lie down. Well, All Human Life is here today. Claire's in Rugby. Claire, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James.
Hello, Claire.
I've been listening with interest to this conversation because when I first heard about it, that the man was put, my initial knee-jerk reaction was, outrage almost.
Same, yes.
And I thought to myself, as I was listening, I was thinking, no, it's fine, actually. And then I thought to myself, well, I'm so conflicted, I can't decide which way I'm thinking.
Well, I think head says not a bad idea. Head says quite a good idea, but heart or something a bit more visceral just sort of balks at it slightly, I think.
I don't know, but in my mind, I started thinking about when Radio 4, when was it? It was BBC, whatever it was in those days.
Come on and start plugging the... Claire, you can't come on here and start plugging the opposition.
No, but what I'm going to say is sort of relevant, then maybe not, is that when they first decided that they needed 1 hour per day just for women, Women's Hour, they actually had the person who was presenting it was a man, which probably nowadays would be very odd.
It would, wouldn't it? I'd forgotten
and I thought, is that a realistic analogy, or is it unfair? And I can't work it out.
No, nor can I. It might be completely irrelevant, but it was certainly a very helpful diversion. I mean, it's about making change in the society you inhabit, and the society at the time wasn't ready to have female presenters on what would have been the home channel, I think, back then. And so mad though it sounds to us, at the time, that was actually progress from what happened before.
Oh,
This is different because there's no one is suggesting that they couldn't appoint a woman, are they, to this role?
No, you're quite right. I'm flip-flopping, but I'm more of the mind that, well, why not?
You flip, I'll flop. I'm all over the place on this one, and now I'm worried about what's going to happen when Sheila comes into the studio in a few minutes' time. She's obviously got quite strong views on this from the other end of the spectrum, and I'm a bloke, so who cares what I think? Oh, it's 12:45. It is 12:48, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where this has proved to be a fascinating conversation. And a bit like Craig's story yesterday about dating, which came in via text and just moved me very unexpectedly. So Danny, the window cleaner, has done today. Listen to this. I don't know how relevant this story is, James. My first experience of period poverty was when I was third year senior school in 1988. If I were to describe my friends and myself, I would say that we were horrible little characters. He's used a lot of asterisks, at best. One day we were roaming out of school at lunchtime and the gang leader, Russell Plowman, went and spoke to a girl who I still know today, but I'll only name Russell, who was sitting over the road and not part of our main group. He came back over and said he'd just given her his lunch money because she'd come on her period and needed to go to the chemist. I'm really glad it was a cool kid like Russell that did this and stuck his hand in his pocket, because I learned a really important lesson from that. A lesser one of us might possibly have laughed at her dismay. Wow. Go Russell. And thank you, Danny. Mandy's in St Albans. Mandy, what would you like to say?
I had to phone in because I'm absolutely fuming.
Good. I need you today. I'm amazed at the way this conversation has gone. It's probably my fault. Go on then, fume away.
Well, I also think part of the reason this conversation has gone this way is because women are just so used to men taking roles that might be better suited for someone else.
Maybe.
I think, we're just used to it. And I don't understand how lived experience of this particular issue could not be essential criteria as part of the recruitment process. I'd love to see what the gender makeup was of the people conducting recruitment in the first place.
That'd be discrimination legislation, though, on that, if you think that you'd need lived experience of it to do the job. I mean, I guess the technical answer to your question would be it's project management, not counselling.
Absolutely, but how on earth is he going to understand all of the complexities around this issue? Period poverty could be that your period leaks onto an office chair, it leaks onto your knickers, you can't afford to replace your knickers, it leaks onto your bed sheets, you can't afford to replace your bed sheets. I know all of that because that's all things that have happened to me and my friends.
I know. I mean, am I going to sound horribly out of place if I say that's not very difficult to understand?
Not very difficult, but he wouldn't automatically know all of it, would he? He's going to have to do a lot of learning to get to the point that a normal woman would be at the point she starts the job.
Do you think?
Absolutely. I don't think
depends.
I know.
It depends what the job is, doesn't it? And and that's part of the problem here, is that everybody's kind of turning the job into whatever they want it to be. So this new role was created to promote and implement new legislation. So no one's got lived experience of the legislation because it's new. Specifically focused on
women with the experience of promoting legislation, full stop.
Yes, specifically focused on project management.
Yeah, and there are thousands, if not millions, of women with great project management experience. I just don't think the recruiters have tried hard enough.
That might be true. I mean, that we'll never know, will we? We don't know what their process is. They say Jason was the strongest candidate by changing the culture.
How many times have we heard that before?
I don't know.
Such an easy line to say.
I think the period dignity working group is exclusively female. So the interviewing panel and the people who've made this statement, made this announcement and made this appointment, I think a few people have told me they're all women. I haven't been able to double check it myself. I think we'd probably both hope so.
Yeah.
So does that change your view at all?
Not at all. I mean, I've seen people recruited into things like diversity, equality and inclusion roles, and they've been straight white cis men who have immediately gone out and insulted people because they don't have a full understanding of the experience.
But that's not a reason to think the worst of this lad.
No, it's not. Absolutely. I just think they could have made their lives easier by recruiting a female.
Male midwives don't have any lived experience.
Neither do a lot of female midwives.
Well, exactly. So I'm just questioning the urgency of lived experience.
I don't
Gynecologists. No gynecologist has lived experience.
But you don't need... I mean, this is about addressing period stigma. There is no woman in this country who has not experienced period stigma. And period stigma doesn't just come from men, it comes from women as well.
Yes. I feel I should apologise to you for keeping you on for so long, because you're the only person who's rung in to make these points. So thank you for being so good at it and making the case so powerfully. I'm not wobbling back, but that's probably me suffering from a strain of mansplaining. Because
how can I convince you, James? What's keeping you on the other
because
side?
you'd have to. It's not me that you'd need to convince. It's every other woman that's rung in, who have all of your experiences, all of your lived experiences, and don't share your conviction that it's essential.
The other women, obviously I respect every other person's opinion, particularly other women's experiences.
Not everybody.
Well, absolutely. There are lots I could name that I don't. But I wonder if there's an element of feeling grateful. I'm phoning from England. I'm incredibly jealous that people in Scotland can get free products and I'm still paying my VAT on mine.
Yeah.
Are we just grateful that anyone is in the role full stop? So if it's not the best person for the job, at least the job exists.
Maybe. I was drawn to the line about changing the debate or removing the stigma, encouraging the debate and changing the culture, because oddly, I think him being a man has achieved that in a way. We're having the debate. We're having the conversation.
And I would say, as a talented woman who's very good at marketing, I could probably get you having the conversation in a different way.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, and then I'd respond just because I'm contrary by saying, "Well, why has no one done that already?"
Well, I mean, women have been fighting for a very long time around this issue, and I think most people in England are aware of the fact that we have to pay VAT on our sanitary products because women have done a great job campaigning on that issue.
Not great enough, though, because you're still paying it.
Well,
Mandy, you're brilliant.
With the Tories, aren't we?
No, you're right. If you'd phoned in first, I think that the whole hour would have gone the other way. But because I've got all of the other contributions from all of my other female callers in my pocket, I'm not swinging back the other way with you, even though I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, that would be the worst kind of mansplaining. And it is, for you, lived experience is essential. But you have to accept that for other women, it isn't.
Absolutely.
And there it is.
They're just wrong.
It is. You could do my holiday cover if you carry on like that. 12:55 is the time. Thank you, Mandy. James is another male voice. James is in High Wycombe. James.
Hi, James. How are you?
Very well, mate. What's up?
I think I'm as discombobulated as you are. I had your producer in a few giggles on the call, not because I was trying to make them laugh, but just because I was confused.
Yes.
One of the first intimate medical experiences I had was with a female. Now, as you've rightly pointed out, her lived experience of possessing testicles and a penis, if I'm allowed to say those.
Well, you have now.
Was absent, right? But I trusted that individual's expertise, and I don't think that Jason, in this case, if I recall that's his name, is claiming to have, menstruation.
No.
And I think, as you pointed out, it's what's discombobulating about it is it's cracking open the whole equity, equality, ally insistence. Because on the one hand, a white male of a certain age can be an ally and is demanded to think like an ally. But then when they apply for a role like this, they then are barred from it. And I just sort of wonder, is there a...
But I'm going to have to... we've got two blokes talking about why it's okay when a woman's just told us why it isn't. It's not a good look, is it?
But are we included in society or not? I guess. If it's tax money that's going to be going into subsidy, I don't know if anyone would blink an eyelid. And that this is probably I'll try and word it correctly. Do it. Young pubescent men could have issues which would be very embarrassing to them that they might not want to talk about.
Yes.
And if it was a female czar in charge of that, I don't think, in my honest opinion, there would be any issue with it. Not because.
No, we're back to. I think it was Helen in Sheffield. I hear you. I will blimey. So I started off all confused, and then I wasn't, and now I am again, and now Sheila's arrived, and I'm scared. Sarah's in Bristol. Sarah, last word to you.
Okay, well, I'm not really against a man taking the job as such, but it just seems like women's voices. I'm a menopausal woman. I have to fight to get my voice heard so much more than men around me, and it just feels like even periods now.
Oh man, even this, it's a bloke. He says talking over you.
Everyone will listen to this guy,
Yeah.
but why wouldn't they listen to a woman doing the job?
Yeah.
And I've had really creepy gynecologists that are men, right?
I'm sorry.
And this guy sounds great. There's nothing wrong with him, but if he employs other people, they could be really creepy, and it creeps me out really a lot to have a lot of men explaining to me about periods, and it's just it just feels wrong. It's like another voice, another area where women are losing their voice, and that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
You said it really well, and I think
thank you.
if we could arrive at something perhaps everyone could agree on, and it's not the line the conversation has taken, it seems unlikely that they really couldn't find a woman who would have been able to do the job very well, doesn't it?
Yeah, but no one will listen to her as much because it's a man, and that frustrates me.
I know it does.
But this is my first call as well, so thank you.
You've done brilliantly, and I look forward to your second one. And I'll remember you, Sarah, and I will do my level best not to talk over you, because that would just make everything worse.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Take care. And that is it from me for another day. I'm now going to scurry out of the studio before Sheila Fogarty can grab me by the scruff of my neck.
I love the fact. Are you genuinely scared?
A little bit.
It's my special weapon, my secret weapon. For what it's worth, I couldn't bear to do an hour on that subject. I was so discombobulated by it.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
But I would, exactly. Yeah, I thought I'd leave it to a man. No, but briefly, my take is no womb, no opinion on a light-hearted note, but also on a more serious note. I think there's a safeguarding issue, not particularly with this individual.
Depends
man,
what the job is,
but,
doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's.
But I take that.
Anyway, you're free to go now, uninjured, unharmed. Thanks, James. 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 Thanks, James.
Bầu trời chiều không màu nắng ấm, thầm thầm buồn vọng nhớ về đường. Phương trời xa ai nào hay biết,